John Watmough was born to James and Anna Watmough in Wilmington, Delaware in 1793. James and Anna owned Hope Lodge from 1784 to 1832. They lived in Philadelphia and rented the property out for most of that time. John attended Princeton College and the University of Pennsylvania before enlisting in the Pennsylvania militia during the War of 1812. He spent 3 months guarding the Delaware River in 1813 as a corporal under the command of Colonel Lewis Rush. Watmough received a promotion to second lieutenant and took command of an artillery company in the 2nd Pennsylvania Artillery Regiment under Captain Alexander Williams. The regiment joined General Jacob Brown's invasion force on the New York-Canada frontier in April 1814. Brown led 2,700 soldiers and 600 Iroquois warriors across the Niagara River between Lakes Erie and Ontario on July 3. Brown's troops forced the surrender of a small British garrison at Fort Erie, an incomplete stronghold on the Canadian side of the river. The American invaders inflicted 1,200 casualties on the enemy in battles at Chippewa River on July 5 and Lundy's Lane on July 25. The lack of naval transport made it impossible for Brown to move his army deeper into Canada. He pulled his forces back to the unfinished defenses of Fort Erie. A British force of 2,000 soldiers, sailors, and native warriors besieged Fort Erie on August 3. Lieutenant Watmough received a shrapnel wound in his chest and through one of his arms during a bombardment on August 13. He returned to his post despite his injuries and faced a British assault in the early morning hours of August 15. The enemy attacked 5 times in the darkness and rain. Their 6th attempt moved around the ditch and ascended ladders with pikes, bayonets, and spears. The British reached Watmough's artillery position along the fort's northeast parapet. Captain Williams died at his post. An enemy rifle butt knocked Lieutenant Watmough from the 13-foot-high wall. He crawled about 30 yards, commandeered a cannon, and, with the aid of one man, he loaded, pointed, and fired into the bastion. Watmough fired 7 rounds before he was cut down by a musket ball. His heroic deed and a massive explosion of one of the fort's powder magazines forced the British to retreat. The enemy sustained over 500 casualties. The Americans suffered 80 killed and wounded. Soldiers found Watmough weltering in his blood, but he still retained his senses. The Americans broke the siege of Fort Erie on September 17 and drove the British back to the Chippewa River on September 21. General Brown gave orders to demolish the fort before bringing his army back to the United States on November 5. Lieutenant Watmough recovered from his wounds in a hospital in Buffalo, New York, and returned to Philadelphia. His regiment arrived in New Orleans, Louisiana shortly after General Andrew Jackson's victory in January 1815. He remained in the Army after the war and served as a first lieutenant in a light artillery brigade with the 4th Infantry Regiment during the start of the Seminole Wars in Georgia. He retired as a colonel in October 1816. General Edmund Gaines awarded him a ceremonial saber in token of his meritorious conduct in the war. Watmough served in the House of Representatives from 1831 to 1835 and held various civil service jobs in Philadelphia until his retirement in 1854. The musket ball that struck him down at Fort Erie remained in his chest until a surgeon removed it in 1835. He died in 1861 and rests in Philadelphia's Christ Church Cemetery.